So I was watching the UFC last night, and there was one fight that was on that played out in kind of a pattern or a dynamic that's relatively common in fighting. You see it relatively often. And the situation is such where one guy is clearly beating the other guy. So in this fight, the one guy, they were in the third round of a 3-round fight, and he was clearly winning. Right? He clearly won every round. He was just faster, better, quicker, all the things, right? He was just better than the other guy. He wasn't like hurting the other guy terribly. The other guy was still in the fight and he was there, but it was clear he was losing. So now they're in the final round. There's a few minutes left, and it becomes logically obvious that the only way the guy who's losing has a chance to win is if he just goes for broke, right? If he just lets it go, risks it, and goes for a knockout, because that's the only way he's going to beat this guy. He's not going to win a decision. So you would assume 100 times out of 100, that's what would happen. But you'd be shocked how many times that situation arises and the guy who's losing takes like a complacent, almost conservative approach and doesn't change, doesn't get aggressive, doesn't go for the knockout, just seems to be playing it safe, almost seems to be content with a loss if it's by a judge's decision, right? Would rather lose by a judge's decision and have zero chance of winning than risk, right? Even increase the risk somewhat of being knocked out himself. Right, that appears to be the dynamic in play, and that's just really interesting because, if you step back and you look at some of the math and the mechanics of it, the fighter went into the fight seemingly to win, right? Let's assume their objective was to win. They knew a knockout was a risk. They knew that was part of it. They knew that's the business they're in. But for whatever reason, once in there, maybe they didn't realize how good the guy was, whatever it was, their objective shifted. And even though their stated objective probably, if they were being super thoughtful and you asked them prior to the fight, they would be honest and say, yeah, I want to win the fight. Like, I want to become champion. I want to win. But then in that moment, that fear, the discomfort associated with being knocked out changed everything on them, changed the entire equation, changed their objective. Their objective became, I need to protect against that cost, right? The cost benefits analysis is being run, and the benefit of winning isn't even enough to justify that cost, that risk of being knocked out. It's not a guarantee they'll be knocked out, but that risk, they can't even entertain it. So you run into these, which you would almost call like a knockout cost, right? In the cost benefit analysis, which just shuts it all down, changes the whole dynamic. And what I find particularly interesting about it is when you parallel it, right? When you bring it back to everyday life and the way we think, how many instances are we running into in our lives where we're treating something as this knockout cost and it's totally changing the equation and changing our objective in life? And it's just not logical. It's not warranted. And you could think of tons of examples, right? Our parents' approval, right? Our parents being disappointed at us and not approving us, right? Not approving of what we do. That's a version of a knockout cost for a lot of people. The idea of them being disappointed in the decisions we've made might stop you from doing things that you seemingly clearly want. All else equal, you definitely want. You want to take some job being an actor, right? Or a writer, or an artist. You want to travel across the world and live somewhere else, but you're worried. What do my parents say? And the objective shifts. Instead of the objective being going after what you really want, your goals in life, your dreams in life, it shifts. And it's more about protecting against that risk of facing that disappointment or that disapproval. And it can go on and on, right? Maybe the knockout cost for somebody is status, right? The identity and having enough money and being a powerful status, filled person. And that drives them, right? The risk of losing that is something they can't have. So happiness in life, right? Spending time with their family, enjoying life, enjoying everything that comes with it, not just the work and the money. That objective changes and it becomes about, I can't lose this money. I can't lose this status, right? That knockout cost comes into effect. So my point in bringing this up is I think it's an interesting dynamic, an interesting one to be aware of. And it's not to say that, every time you run into one of these situations where there's a seeming knockout cost that, you just need to man up and get over it and, suck it up. Maybe it's there for a reason. Maybe your parents are right? Maybe in some cases, the feeling of that knockout cost, maybe in this fight this guy was in, he knew this guy was so good that if I risk it at all, I'm definitely getting knocked out, right? Maybe that's right. But the point is, check the math, right? Check it. Make sure we're not overvaluing or miscalculating something and projecting it as a knockout cost when it's not really a legitimate knockout cost. That we're not totally transforming and adjusting what we're striving for in life, what our objective is, what we want out of life, what makes us happy and brings us pleasure. That we're not totally turning that on its head because we have this fear of the discomfort that comes with this type of knockout cost. If something's going to be that impactful in our lives, we need to check the math. We need to be thorough. We need to be sure and make sure that we're acting big L logically.